I recently finished reading Goethe's Italian Journey, which is a compilation of his journal entries and letters to friends that he wrote during his trip to Italy that took place in 1786 and it lasted for 2 years. And he embarked upon this journey for a couple of reasons. One, he wanted to understand what Italian life and culture was like. He wanted to get inspiration. He wanted to see art. He wanted to study drawing. And he wanted to meet all of his connections that he happened to have throughout Italy. He was a very well connected figure. And I read this for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to see what a famous author from over 200 years ago had to say about this country that I recently moved to and see what he acknowledged right off the bat and what stuck with him. And I also wanted to see what life was really like in this era. What was the general consensus about different things? Because it's always better to go right to the source rather than read, something that's been diluted by a historian. And I bookmarked some quotes that resonate with me that I think are worth sharing. My purpose in making this wonderful journey is not to delude myself, but to discover myself in the objects I see. I think this is a very constructive and noble way to look at travel, not just as mere entertainment, but also as a self-education, because you're putting yourself in somewhere that you're not comfortable. It's challenging your beliefs and seeing what's actually at the core, what's beyond your programmed beliefs. I think that was a very profound way of looking at the value of travel that I never actually read in such a way before. Understanding is not the same as doing. Quickness of understanding is a mental faculty, but right doing requires the practice of a lifetime. However, feeble as his efforts may be, the amateur should not despair. The few lines I draw on the paper, often too hasty and seldom exact, help me to a better comprehension of physical objects. The more closely and precisely one observes particulars, the sooner one arrives at a perception of the whole. One must not, however, compare oneself with the artist, but proceed in one's own manner. Nature has provided for all her children. Even the least of them is not hindered in his existence by the existence of the greatest. A little man is still a man. Let us leave it at that. Now, Goethe is not known for his drawings. He's known for his writing, but he still got a heck of a lot out of pursuing art. And I think this was a very profound way of looking at the value of pursuing art. There's always going to be people that are better than you at anything. But that should not discourage you from trying, because you can come to the same understandings inside yourself as the best artist that exists. So he's saying to pursue art for yourself, for your own development, not to impress people, not to copy somebody else. For example, I love playing the piano, as you may have noticed from some of my other videos. There are 10-year-olds in China who can play the pieces I'm struggling with effortlessly. But that doesn't detract from the value that I get out of just working on it and learning about my limitations and learning about the human condition, learning about what it means to be alive and grow faculties that are innate within us that aren't going to be developed by somebody else for you. You have to work on it yourself and put in the work. Nobody can change himself and nobody can escape his destiny. This is also an underlying theme in Goethe's work. Basically, we're all dealt a hand and can't change it. We didn't decide where we grew up. We didn't decide the body we have. All we can do is try to make the best possible decisions. But what's interesting to think about is that regardless of the decision we make, all paths lead to Rome. No pun intended. We come to the same conclusions, to the same outcomes. Just the different paths may be more or less painful. To acquire an intimate knowledge of Rome, its atmosphere, its art, and to feel natural and at home, one must do as I am doing, live here and walk about the city day after day. The impressions of a mere tourist are bound to be false. Spending a few days or even a couple of weeks in a place is not enough to understand the mindset of somebody who's living there and seeing the people on a daily basis, seeing the scenery on a daily basis and how that inspires you over a long period of time. While living this year among strangers, I have observed that all really intelligent people, some in a refined, some in a gross way, that the moment is everything, and that the sole privilege of a reasonable being is to behave in such a manner, insofar as the choice lies with him, that his life contains the greatest possible sum of reasonable and happy moments. I don't think it's a coincidence that he came to this realization in Italy. Italians are generally, I think they're more able to just let go and live in the moment and enjoy life's simple pleasures. And at the end of the day, it's a choice. It's a choice to make as many moments as possible happy and reasonable, which is a very German way of looking at it. Long ago, a wise man said with truth that he whose powers are not up to the necessary and the useful likes to busy himself with the unnecessary and the useless. Ain't that the truth? And this goes to show that people don't really change. It's just a part of weakness in human nature, which we all have. We all have the capacity to be useful or not useful, in my opinion. But this should, of course, inspire us to strive to be necessary and useful. Now, the following quote is an extremely interesting passage that depicts what scientists of the time believed. And who knows, maybe they're right. No one can give us a straight answer to this day as to with sufficient proof as to how humans came to be. The human race had not propagated itself over the whole earth from one couple in the Orient, or Adam and Eve, but at some unusually productive epoch and under especially favorable conditions, the human species had appeared simultaneously and perfectly developed in various places all over the globe, long after nature had produced by degrees the animals in all their diversity. Man, it was thought, was born with a language which was intimately bound up with his organs and mental faculties, so that it was unnecessary to bring in supernatural guidance or traditional instruction. Why are there so many similarities? Or if why is Japanese Japanese? Why is French French? Maybe it's because those people's DNA designed them to speak in such a way. All these languages are slightly different, of course, but they're also strikingly similar. But, anyways, that's just fun to think about. This next quote contains allegories for life that Goethe acknowledged while participating in a Roman carnival. The long, narrow corso packed with people recalls to us no less the road to our earthly life. There, too, a man is both actor and spectator. There, too, in disguise or out of it, he has very little room to himself. And whether in a carriage or on foot, can only advance by inches, moved forward or halted by external forces rather than by his own free will. There too he struggles to reach a better and more pleasant place from which, caught again in the crowd, he is again squeezed out. There's a few different ways to pick this apart. One is we're both actor and spectator. Shakespeare said all the world is a stage. We're acting a role, and we're also observing ourselves play a role in a way. Regardless of where you try to go, there's going to be all these different forces stifling you and pushing you gently in a different direction. Like it's like when you meet your future spouse or partner, or whatever. You in most cases, in many cases, you meet them randomly, and it could be the fact that you were at a stoplight for like 30 seconds longer. It's the details are everything. But they still serve as forces that are gently nudging us towards our fate, as Goethe would suggest. Life taken as a whole is like the Roman carnival, unpredictable, unsatisfactory, and problematic. I hope that this carefree crowd of maskers will make them remember how valuable is every moment of joy, however fleeting and trivial it may seem to be. Now, again, Goethe is explaining how important it is to live in the moment and make each moment as joyful as possible, because life is very painful. It's very unpredictable and problematic, and we're all gonna suffer at one point or another. But that's just like Roman carnival. Everything's an allegory for everything. He's seeing all these connections regardless of where he turns and looks. And that's what travel does. Now, after reading this entire book, what stood out to me the most was what he observed in the Italians, and what I think is still largely true today. They have very strong characters and have a highly developed ability to live in the moment. They're also generally artistic, and they know how to dress. There's like that's a stereotype for a reason. I think they can recognize beauty. A lot of their homes and architecture and even just furniture they make is really really pretty, and I think that they have a knack for that for whatever reason. I think this is a place that brings out some of the best qualities in human nature, and I could see why Goethe wanted to live here for a time, and this is why I want to live here too, and I didn't even know it. um, but and to go even further, I think there's a reason Italy is so renowned for its art, wine, and gastronomy. There's a reason I think the Roman Empire was based in Rome, and the Vatican is where it is. It's literally a fruitful, rich place. And one thing I've noticed is that wherever the soil is exceptionally rich, like in Ukraine, for example, or Italy in this case, everything grows here. You know, their fruits and vegetables, the wine, they have their own tobacco. It's everything grows here. Wherever that is the case, it's reflected in the inhabitants' minds, bodies, and spirits.